The Amazon River moved slowly through the dense jungle, its brown water reflecting the first light of morning. Sarah Chin wiped the sweat from her forehead and adjusted her camera strap. She had been tracking this group of river dolphins for almost a week, but today something felt different. Through her lens, she counted 7 dolphins breaking the surface in their usual spots. The pink river dolphins of Brazil were already rare enough, but what caught her attention made her hands shake. A small shape struggled near the back of the group, barely keeping up with the others. Sarah zoomed in closer. Her breath caught in her throat. The baby dolphin was completely white. Not the soft pink color of its family, but pure white like fresh snow. Its eyes were pale, almost transparent in the morning light. This was an albino river dolphin, something Sarah had only read about in old research papers. In 15 years of studying these waters, she had never seen one. The calf kept falling behind. Every few minutes it would surface for air, gasping harder than it should. The other dolphins moved forward in their daily search for fish, but this little one could barely keep pace. Its white skin looked raw and sensitive, nothing like the thick, protective skin of normal dolphins. Sarah's mind raced. She knew the numbers. Albino animals in the wild almost never survived. They had weak eyesight, sensitive skin, and stood out to every predator in the river. The Amazon had caimans, anacondas, and jaguars that would spot this white baby from far away. She had spent her whole career following one simple rule: watch but never interfere. Nature had its own way of working things out. Human interference almost always made things worse, no matter how good the intentions were. But watching this small dolphin struggle made her question everything. Sarah could call the wildlife rescue team in Manaus. They had veterinarians who specialized in river dolphins. They could take the baby, treat it, maybe even raise it in captivity where it would be safe. The calf would live, but it would never know the freedom of the open river. Where she could do nothing. Let the family handle this on their own. But what if they couldn't? What if this baby was suffering and she had the power to help but chose not to? The white dolphin surfaced again, closer this time. Sarah could see the exhaustion in the way it moved. Its mother swam nearby, circling back every few minutes to check on her struggling baby. The rest of the pod had slowed down, but they were still moving forward, following the river's current toward deeper waters. Sarah lowered her camera and stared at the water. She had maybe an hour to make a decision that could mean life or death for this rare creature. The weight of that choice pressed down on her shoulders like the humid jungle air. Sarah made a choice that went against every instinct screaming in her head. She would wait. Just for one more day. She needed to see if the pod had any plan for their weakest member. She radioed her research partner, Miguel, who was monitoring water conditions downstream. His voice crackled through the static. He had seen the white dolphin too. His words were careful, but Sarah could hear the concern underneath. The morning stretched into afternoon. Sarah followed the pod from her small boat, keeping enough distance not to disturb them. She documented everything through her camera, knowing these images might be the only record of this dolphin's short life. Then something unexpected happened. The mother dolphin had been swimming in circles around her white baby for hours. Now she released a series of clicks and whistles that Sarah had never heard before. The sound was different from normal dolphin communication, sharper and more urgent. The entire pod stopped moving. One by one the other dolphins turned back. They gathered around the albino calf in a loose circle. The largest dolphin, probably the grandmother based on her size and scars, approached the struggling baby. She positioned herself directly underneath it, lifting it slightly with her back. Sarah's hands trembled as she adjusted her camera settings. This was remarkable. For the next 2 hours, the dolphins took turns supporting the white calf. When one got tired, another would slide into position. They moved as a unit, barely covering any distance, but keeping the baby afloat and rested. The mother never left its side, constantly touching it with her flippers and snout. As the sun began to set, the pod found a calm inlet where the river widened and slowed. The current was gentler here, easier for a weak swimmer to manage. They settled into the shallow water, forming a protective barrier between the albino calf and the main river channel. Sarah anchored her boat at a safe distance and watched through the fading light. The white dolphin was still alive, still breathing, and its family had completely changed their routine to keep it that way. She pulled out her notebook and started writing. The scientific part of her brain wanted to document every behavior, every pattern. But another part of her, the human part, simply felt moved by what she was seeing. These dolphins were making sacrifices. They had abandoned their normal feeding grounds. They had slowed their travel to almost nothing. Every decision they made now revolved around keeping one small, weak member alive. Sarah thought about the rescue team again. Her phone had signal here. One call and they could be here by morning. But watching the pod work together in the growing darkness, she wondered if human help would destroy something important that was happening naturally. The white dolphin surfaced near its mother, and for the first time all day, it seemed calm. Protected. Safe. Sarah woke up at dawn with her neck stiff from sleeping in the boat. Her first thought was the white dolphin. Had it survived the night? She grabbed her binoculars and scanned the inlet. Relief flooded through her when she spotted the familiar white shape floating peacefully near the center of the pod. The baby was alive. But something had changed overnight. The dolphins had organized themselves differently. 3 adults now stayed constantly close to the albino calf, rotating positions every few hours. They created a moving shelter with their bodies, blocking the harsh sunlight that seemed to bother the baby's sensitive skin. Miguel arrived in his boat around mid-morning with supplies and fresh water. He had been researching albino dolphins during the night. The news was not encouraging. Most died within weeks from infections, sunburn, or predator attacks. Their eyesight was so poor they could barely hunt. They had almost no chance in the wild. Sarah shared what she had observed. Miguel watched through his own camera for a while, then looked at her with troubled eyes. He thought they should call for help. The baby was suffering even if the pod was trying their best. They argued for almost an hour. Miguel made valid points. The dolphins could only do so much. Modern medicine could do more. Sarah understood his logic, but something told her to wait just a little longer. By the 3rd day, Sarah noticed the albino calf was drinking milk more frequently. The mother had adjusted her position to make feeding easier. The baby stayed closer to the surface now, not diving as deep as normal dolphins would. The pod had accepted this new limitation and stayed in shallower waters. The white dolphin also started responding to its mother's calls. Its movements were still slow and careful, but there was less panic than before. It seemed to understand that its family would not leave it behind. On the 4th day, Sarah witnessed something that made her reach for her camera immediately. A young dolphin, probably a sibling, had started swimming alongside the albino calf. Not just near it but matching its exact pace. When the white dolphin needed to rest, the sibling would circle slowly, keeping it company. When it was ready to move, they would swim together in perfect rhythm. The bond between these two was different from the protective behavior of the adults. This was companionship. Friendship. The young dolphin had chosen to stay with its weaker sibling instead of playing with the others. Sarah watched them through her lens and felt her resolve strengthen. The rescue team would separate this baby from its companion, from its mother, from everything it knew. They would save its life, but at what cost? That evening she made a decision. She would give the pod 1 more week. If the calf was still declining, she would make the call. But if it showed any improvement, any sign of adapting, she would trust the dolphin's instincts. The 5th day brought a challenge Sarah had been dreading. Dark clouds gathered over the jungle, and by afternoon, rain pounded the river's surface. The current grew stronger, pushing against the calm inlet where the pod had been sheltering. Sarah watched anxiously from under her boat's canvas cover. The white dolphin was being pushed around by the choppy water. It struggled to stay oriented, its poor eyesight making navigation nearly impossible in the murky, disturbed river. The pod's response was immediate and coordinated. The adults formed a tight formation around the calf, creating a barrier against the strongest currents. The siblings stayed pressed against the albino's side, providing physical guidance. Together, they moved the entire group toward an even more protected area where overhanging trees broke the rain's impact. The storm lasted 3 hours. When it finally passed, Sarah counted all 8 dolphins. Everyone had made it through, including the fragile white baby. But the next morning revealed new concerns. The river had risen significantly, bringing murkier water and stronger currents. Fish were harder to find. The pod needed to hunt, but they couldn't leave the albino calf alone in these conditions. Sarah watched as the dolphins developed a solution. Half the pod would hunt while the other half stayed with the baby. They worked in shifts, ensuring the calf was never unprotected while everyone still got food. The mother's milk alone wasn't enough anymore. The baby needed to start learning to fish. This is where Sarah saw something truly incredible. The sibling dolphin caught a small fish and brought it directly to the albino calf. The white dolphin fumbled with it at first, its poor vision making it difficult to grab properly. But the sibling was patient, holding the fish steady, adjusting position to make it easier. After several attempts, the albino calf managed to eat its first solid food. Over the next 2 days, this pattern continued. The sibling became a teacher, showing the white dolphin how to sense fish through echolocation instead of relying on sight. The sounds they made together filled the river, a constant stream of clicks and whistles as one taught and the other learned. By the end of the first week, the albino calf had learned to catch small, slow-moving fish on its own. It still needed help with faster prey, but the progress was undeniable. The baby was adapting. Sarah reviewed her footage each night, documenting behaviors that researchers had never recorded before. The pod had created new communication patterns, new hunting strategies, new ways of moving through the river. They had completely reorganized their lives around one vulnerable member. Miguel visited again on the 8th day. He watched silently for a long time, then nodded slowly. The dolphins knew what they were doing. The rescue team wasn't needed. Not yet, anyway. Sarah felt the tight knot in her chest finally loosen. She had made the right choice to wait. Nature was proving far more capable than human intervention could have been. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah first spotted the white dolphin. She sat in her boat one final time, preparing to leave for her next research location in Peru. Her contract required her to move on, but her heart wanted to stay. Through her camera, she watched the pod moving through the river with ease. The albino calf swam confidently in the middle of the group, no longer struggling to keep pace. Its siblings stayed close by choice now, not necessity. They had become inseparable partners. The white dolphin had learned to navigate using sound rather than sight. It followed the river's depth changes, avoided obstacles, and even played with the younger dolphins. The raw patches on its skin had healed, protected by the shade the adults provided during the hottest parts of the day. Most importantly, the calf had found its place. It was no longer a burden the pod had to carry. It was simply another member of the family, valued and protected. Sarah took one last photograph. The entire pod swimming together, the white dolphin visible in the center, surrounded by the soft pink bodies of its family. The image captured everything she had witnessed. Adaptation, sacrifice, unconditional love. She packed her equipment slowly, savoring these final moments. Before starting her engine, she sent a brief report to the wildlife authorities. The albino river dolphin was thriving under natural care. No intervention needed. The family had succeeded where humans might have failed. As her boat pulled away, Sarah looked back one more time. The white dolphin surfaced alongside its sibling, both releasing air in perfect unison. They dove together and disappeared into the brown water. Sarah smiled. Some stories didn't need heroes or rescues. Sometimes the greatest gift was simply trusting that nature already had the answers. The Amazon had taught her that lesson, and she would carry it forever.